All right, today we're diving into something truly wild. A world where a single lie doesn't just hurt someone's feelings, it can literally shatter reality. We're talking about a place built not on magic or gods, but on the terrifyingly fragile idea of truth itself.
So let's start with a really big question. And I want you to forget about lies as a moral problem for just a minute. What if a lie wasn't just wrong? What if it was a physical act of vandalism? What if saying something that isn't true could literally physically unmake the world around you?
Well, in this universe, there's actually a name for that terrifying field of study: pseudo-apology. But this isn't about ethics. We're talking pure physics. It's a science that treats lies like a literal acid that just dissolves the very fabric of being. It turns language itself into a physical, corrosive force.
Okay, so how exactly does a simple lie manage to do that much damage? Let's break down the fundamental premise of how this world is actually put together and, more importantly, how it's taken apart. I want you to think of reality like it's a meticulously built skyscraper. Every single fact, every law of physics, is a load-bearing steel beam. And it's all held in place because everyone and everything agrees that it's true. So a lie, then, isn't just a statement. It's a sudden, catastrophic crack in the foundation. It's a critical structural failure.
And that failure? It has a name, a lacuna. It's this tiny tear in reality that gets ripped open by the friction between what is and what somebody said is. And here's the really creepy part. This isn't a portal to another dimension. It's a hole filled with, well, nothing. And I don't mean a vacuum or darkness. I mean the active, aggressive absence of existence itself.
So, what are the actual mechanics behind all this destruction? I mean, it's one thing to say a lie breaks the world, but how does it go from a tiny little tear to a full-blown cataclysm? Let's dive into the physics of the unmaking.
Well, it turns out the scale of the destruction is directly proportional to the scale of the lie. Makes sense, right? A little white lie, something insignificant, might just cause a sound to drop out for a second, a momentary glitch. But a great deception? Oh, that carves out a permanent void gap, a region where perception itself just stops. It's not that it's dark. It's that your brain literally cannot process what it's seeing. It's a complete amputation from reality.
And the process is almost clinical. It starts when a lie is spoken with real conviction. Then, reality itself tries to process this new, contradictory piece of information, and it just can't. It fails. That failure creates what they call the friction of contradiction. And this isn't some metaphor. It's the actual force that bores a permanent, unhealing wound into the world.
Of course, if a force like this exists, somebody is going to try to weaponize it. And that brings us to the practitioners of this unmaking, the people who intentionally wield non-existence as a tool.
These folks are called void tongues, and this quote from the people who study them tells you everything you need to know about the terrible price they pay. See, they aren't gaining power in the way you might think. They're becoming empty. They're being hollowed out by the very void they command.
So how do they even use this power? They manipulate something called the gravity of absence. A lacuna, one of those reality tears, doesn't pull on physical things like normal gravity. No, it exerts a pull on the truth of an object. It can pull the stoneness from a wall until it just dissolves, or it can pull the history from a person, making them forget who they even are. It's a power that works like a vacuum, sucking the reality right out of things. But wow, there is a price. Every single lie they tell erodes their own reality. This process is called identity shear. Their memories, their personal history, it all becomes unstable, optional. Their very biology starts to fail because the truth of their own body is coming undone. In the end, the liar literally becomes the lie. And this all leads to the final, absolutely terrifying state, the hollowed. This is a person who has become a living lacuna. The universe just doesn't agree that they exist anymore. They are a walking contradiction, a hole in the shape of a person, and their very presence just unravels the world around them.
So, who's left to deal with this kind of decay? Not heroes, not wizards, but a very different sort of organization. It's time to meet the universe's coroners.
They're called the Collegium of Structural Truths, and their job isn't to save the world. It is far, far too late for that. Their whole purpose is to perform a continuous autopsy on existence itself. They're part civil engineer, part end-of-life care nurse, and they're just documenting the death of reality one lie at a time.
Their whole structure is like this grim, failing bureaucracy. You've got surveyors on the front lines, risking their own identity just by getting close enough to measure the void gaps. Then there are the surveyor physicians, whose entire job is to watch their own colleagues for signs of mental and physical rot. And at the very top, you have the remaining editors, a title that is chillingly literal because their ranks are constantly thinned by what they call ontological accidents.
And their whole philosophy is simple: diagnosis over mastery. They have no interest in using this power, they see it as a disease. To them, a void tongue isn't some powerful mage you have to fight. They're a patient in the final, highly contagious stages of a terminal infection. And the Collegium, they're just recording the symptoms as the world dies.
This brings us to our final section and to the philosophical horror that's sitting right at the heart of this entire system. What is the ultimate weapon in a war that's being waged against truth itself? It's this: the sincere lie, a falsehood that is told by someone who is utterly convinced that it is the truth. Think about it. Because reality's only defense is spotting a contradiction, it has no way to fight a lie that comes packaged with a full, unwavering conviction of truth. This means the most dangerous person alive isn't the most malicious liar. It's the one who is most sincerely, powerfully, and convincingly wrong. The true believer becomes the ultimate destroyer.
And here we find the ultimate cosmic irony. There are two paths to oblivion in this world. The void tongue lies until they dissolve into nothing. But their opposite, a so-called concordance keeper who obsessively affirms reality, just collapses into a tautology. They become a being who can only state what is over and over again until they're no longer a person. One disappears into the void, the other disappears into the dictionary. Neither one of them stays human.
And this is the Collegium's final, tragic understanding of their own work. They aren't creating a record for a future that probably won't exist. They aren't trying to warn anybody. They are simply acting as terminal witnesses to the end of everything, just documenting the unraveling as it happens, for an audience that will almost certainly never get to read it.
And so we end on this really unsettling thought. If all of existence is just a shared story that we all agree on, what happens when someone with absolute conviction tells a better, more compelling, but fundamentally untrue story? What happens when the most charismatic person is also the most wrong? The answer, in this universe, is nothing. Literally.